Welcome to latest News Blaster. For decades, the partnership between Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton was considered one of the most magical unions in country music, a blend of charm, humor, chemistry, and a kind of effortless harmony that fans swore could never be manufactured. Their bond appeared unbreakable on stage, in interviews, and behind the scenes, and for millions of fans across generations, they were the golden duo who made duets feel divine. But beneath the shine, beneath the laughter, beneath the famously playful banter, there was a period where the two icons didn't speak at all, a silence that lasted far longer than anyone expected. And now, the truth behind that silence is resurfacing, revealing layers of tension, misunderstandings, bruised egos, and decisions that sent shockwaves through the industry. It all began quietly, almost invisibly. There was no public fallout, no dramatic argument caught on camera, no harsh words exchanged on stage. Instead, it was a slow burn, a misalignment of vision, of timing, of expectations, that neither superstar anticipated would grow into a years-long rift. Many insiders later said that the conflict was almost inevitable, considering how intensely their careers were intertwined during their peak. When you create something as iconic as Islands in the Stream, the world begins to expect perfection, and sometimes perfection becomes a pressure that even legends feel. What fans never knew was that after one particular disagreement, one that insiders still whisper about, the easy, natural communication between Kenny and Dolly began to crumble. They went from talking almost every week to not talking at all. And for two stars who always insisted their bond was like family, the silence hit harder than any public argument ever could. Several industry sources have described the root of the issue as a creative betrayal, though both stars saw the situation differently. Dolly reportedly believed Kenny had made a decision behind her back, a business move that impacted both of them, and she felt blindsided. The warmth she always expressed publicly didn't match the private sting she carried for months. Kenny, on the other hand, believed Dolly misunderstood his intentions entirely, and by the time he tried to explain, the damage was already done. The disagreement centered around the one thing that tied them the closest: their music. After the global success of their collaborations, record executives pushed heavily for a full comeback project, a reunion album that would bring the duo back into the spotlight at the exact moment nostalgia was peaking. The idea was massive, the budget was massive, and the expectations were even bigger. Dolly wanted to approach the project in a certain way, her way, focusing on storytelling simplicity and what she called heart first. Kenny, however, was under pressure from entirely different teams, who envisioned a more commercial direction, something with a modern polish that could help Kenny re-establish himself in a rapidly changing industry. The clash was immediate and emotional. Dolly reportedly felt that the purity of their partnership was being threatened. For her, their duets had always been about natural chemistry, not commercial plans. For Kenny, the shift in sound wasn't about selling out, it was about evolution. But as their teams pulled them in opposite directions, their own communication began to unravel. Calls weren't returned, emails slowed down, misunderstandings piled up. Those closest to them said the miscommunication was like a slow poison. Behind closed doors, the situation worsened. Rumors began circulating that Dolly felt Kenny had agreed to certain deals without consulting her, deals that directly affected projects with her name attached. Kenny, meanwhile, was reportedly frustrated that Dolly had become unreachable, convinced she was avoiding him at a time when clarity was crucial. Neither star publicly acknowledged the tension, but both were privately feeling it. And when the industry noticed that the once inseparable duo hadn't appeared together for over a year, the rumor mill exploded. Friends say that a particular moment, one single moment, sealed the silence that followed. During a major event where both artists were scheduled to appear, Dolly allegedly decided to skip a backstage meeting that had been arranged to break the tension. She later said it was because she didn't want a forced conversation, but Kenny took it as a clear message that she didn't want to talk at all. And so the silence between them became real, intentional, and painful. For fans, the quietness didn't make sense. Their chemistry on stage had always felt genuine, effortless. They teased each other, praised each other, and laughed like best friends. But stars are human too, and sometimes even the strongest partnerships bend under the weight of fame and expectations. During those silent years, both artists went on with their own individual projects, but many close to them said the absence of the other was noticeable. Dolly continued rising as one of the most beloved figures in entertainment, and Kenny embraced new musical paths. Yet interviews from that era show subtle hints: a nostalgic tone from Dolly when Kenny's name was mentioned, a soft smile from Kenny when asked about Dolly's career. The affection never died, but the communication had. What hurt the most, insiders say, is that neither truly wanted the distance. They were both waiting for the other to break the silence. Both believed the other one was still upset. And both, in different interviews years later, admitted that pride can create walls even between people who love each other deeply. Eventually, the silence began to crack, slowly, hesitantly, and through unexpected circumstances. Friends intervened, mutual contacts pushed them gently back toward each other. A tribute project sparked conversations that felt familiar again, and when they finally reconnected, the warmth returned instantly. It was as if the years of distance had melted away, and the depth of their bond resurfaced. When Kenny later spoke about Dolly, he described her as a soul partner in music, someone whose presence shaped his career in ways he never imagined. Dolly in turn expressed emotional gratitude for the years they worked together, calling him one of the greatest men to ever bless the stage. Still, the painful truth is this: they lost years they could have spent laughing, singing, and creating more memories that fans desperately wanted. Years that both later admitted they regretted letting slip away. But their story remains one of the most compelling tales in country music. Two legends with unmatched chemistry, separated not by scandal or betrayal, but by timing, pressure, pride, and misunderstandings that neither intended to grow into a storm. It's a reminder that even the brightest partnerships can face shadows, and even the strongest bonds can bend under unspoken hurt. Today, fans look back on their duets with new meaning, understanding that behind the glow was a deeper, more human story, one filled with love, silence, and ultimately reconciliation. And while Kenny is no longer here to speak for himself, the legacy of their partnership continues to echo through every performance, every tribute, and every moment Dolly reflects on their time together. Because no silence, no matter how long, can erase the magic they created or the mark they left on music history. Their story remains one of the greatest what-ifs in the genre, a powerful reminder that even legends can break, heal, and rediscover each other again. And in the end, the truth behind why they stopped talking is not just a story of conflict, but a testament to how deeply they cared, how much they meant to one another, and how fragile even legendary relationships can be when communication slips away. Even after their reconciliation, the story of why Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton stopped talking for years continued to haunt the country music world, becoming one of those whispered legends that insiders referenced with a mix of curiosity and sadness. What made it even more significant was the emotional maturity they both showed once they finally confronted the silence between them. Dolly reportedly told close friends that the first real conversation they had, after the long pause, felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years, and Kenny, in his private moments, said he believed that if they had spoken earlier, none of the hurt would have lasted as long as it did. Those who were present during their reunion described a moment filled with genuine emotion, not dramatic, not theatrical, but deeply human. Dolly arrived with that familiar warmth, her trademark smile hiding a flicker of nervousness, and Kenny, with that gentle voice and steady presence, broke the ice with a quiet joke, making Dolly laugh the way she always used to. That single laugh, people say, softened everything. The years dissolved, the tension vanished, the bond resurfaced as if it had been waiting patiently in the background, untouched by time. But behind that reconciliation was a powerful lesson that both artists carried for the rest of their careers. Communication matters more than chemistry. Even the strongest duo can fall apart if silence replaces honesty. Dolly later admitted the guilt she felt, not because of the disagreement itself, but because she let her hurt simmer instead of confronting it. Kenny, in interviews during his later years, hinted that he too wished he had reached out sooner, even if he wasn't sure how the conversation would go. Their friendship was too precious, too defining, to waste on assumptions, and both of them knew it. What shocked many fans was learning that the disagreement itself had been relatively small when compared to the magnitude of the silence that followed. It wasn't a betrayal of trust or a personal attack. It was a miscommunication amplified by hectic schedules, demanding teams, and the pressure of living up to a legacy that millions adored. And perhaps that is what made it hurt so much for both of them. Their bond wasn't ordinary, it wasn't superficial, it was built over decades of shared stages, mutual respect, and a type of emotional rhythm that made their duets feel like confessions sung in harmony. When that bond broke, even briefly, the absence felt enormous. But the greatest heartbreak for fans came in hindsight, realizing that by the time they began reconnecting, life had already shifted. Kenny's health, which had been quietly declining in the years before his retirement, made their time together more limited. Dolly, always optimistic, always pushing forward, seemed to cherish every interaction more deeply than ever, as if she knew the importance of protecting the final chapters of their partnership. Those who saw them during those final years say there was a softness between them, a gratitude, a gentleness, a silent acknowledgement that they had overcome something important and didn't want to waste another minute. Dolly often spoke with pride about Kenny's impact, calling him a light, while Kenny would describe Dolly as one of the greatest gifts of my life. And when Kenny passed away, Dolly's tribute made it clear that any silence between them had long since dissolved. Her voice cracked, her eyes filled, and she spoke not as a collaborator mourning a colleague, but as a friend mourning someone who once held a permanent space in her life. In the end, the story of why they stopped talking is not defined by anger or resentment, it's defined by reconciliation, reflection, and the realization that even legendary partnerships are vulnerable. Their silence changed them, matured